транспортно-логистический холдинг «Российские железные дороги». Мы развиваем транспортную инфраструктуру страны, строим новые станции, вокзалы и создаем новые возможности для вашего бизнеса. Делая мир максимально доступным для всех, мы адаптируем вокзалы и транспортные узлы под нужды каждого. Более миллиарда поездок каждый год совершают наши пассажиры. Лучшие скоростные и высокоскоростные поезда сделают ваше путешествие комфортным, быстрым и безопасным. Мы вовремя доставляем наших пассажиров в пункты назначения, чтобы вы не пропустили самые яркие моменты жизни. Мы — самый экологичный транспорт. Стремясь сохранить природу и пейзажи за окном поезда, мы вносим еще больше вклад в охрану окружающей среды, экономя воду, сортируя отходы и сокращая выбросы. Новые маршруты и легендарные направления. Безупречная репутация надежного партнера. Мы развиваемся и бережем наше наследие, сокращая расстояния и сближая людей. Внедряя передовые цифровые и квантовые технологии, мы предлагаем удобные электронные сервисы для грузоотправителей и приближаем будущее. Мы — локомотив экономики. Сотни миллионов тонн грузов ежегодно. Развитие науки, промышленности и социальной сферы — это наш вклад в благосостояние страны и ваша уверенность в завтрашнем дне. Российские железные дороги. Мы меняемся для вас.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Maxim Grigoriev. I'm happy to welcome you at the promotion. This event is organized by RZD together with the Good Oak Publishing House. We started discussing digital transformation a year ago at the Promotion 5020 conference, which took place in Sochi. This was a year ago, and today, with the Promotion.Digital, we continue and we conclude the series of promotion events this year. Today, we will talk about digitization in the transport sector and the way it functions under the current circumstances in the crisis, which we can also call multimodal. There has been a lot of hype over this subject in recent times, but we are getting mature now, and the crisis has demonstrated that multimodal transportation is a way of survival for many companies, a tool for further development and even transformation. By the way, digital technology, digital projects are one of the few areas which will not be reduced or experience a downturn next year. On the contrary, experts believe this area will be growing. In turn, it will have to show effective performance and offer specific results, specific achievements. And on the whole, this whole sector of transport and logistics will be no exception. In the near future, Estimates vary, of course, but the key technologies will be the Internet of Things, advanced analytics, AI. Actually, one of the indications that this area getting mature is that we have moved on to more comprehensive, more integrated technological solutions, which include various individual solutions. In transport, in particular, we see some comprehensive solutions. Another trend we see today is intellectually connected spaces, smart connections between various facilities, objects, people, processes. And this can be done in real time using immersive technology. And one more point, we see digital platforms emerging. They work in real time and they ensure global transparency, which is very important for logistics, for transport. These technical innovations help us develop business models, use multimodality, and use the data we have to offer such cross-cutting solutions. Today, we'll talk to some of the leading experts on digitization of the transport sector. We'll take a look at the pandemic, how it affected the transformations happening in the transport sector, how it improved the performance of multimodal models, and how these capabilities can be further expanded. Our event will be streamed live on our platform, and our viewers will have a chance to send in their questions. So you have to get registered to do that, and you can send in your question via the chat box next to the stream window. And we'll pick some questions from the chat box and ask them at the end of our event today. So let me give you the names of our panelists today. Today, we'll use the hybrid mode. Here at the Good of Publishing House, I have Yevgeny Charkin, Deputy CEO of Russian Railways. By the way, Yevgeny, congratulations. You were recently promoted to this new position. And we also joined via video conference by Alexei Grom, CEO of UTLC, United Transport and Logistics Company, Eurasian Railway Alliance. Thank you, Mr. Grom. We also have Evgeny Tkachenko, Deputy Director of the Digital Transformation Department of the Transport Ministry. Mr. Tkachenko, hello. Hello. We also have Natalia Kapkaeva, Head of Port Hamburg Marketing EV Office in Moscow. Hello, Ms. Kapkaeva. We also have Anton Zamkov, Director of the Digital Transport and Logistics Association, CEO of RT Invest Transport Systems. Hello, Mr. Zamkov. Hello. We also have Alexei Nozdrin, Deputy CEO of Trans Telecom. Hello, Mr. Nozdrin. Hello. We also have Gennady Glevitsky, Deputy Chief Engineer of the Belarusian Railway. Mr. Glevitsky, hello. We also have Capuchini Turang Letregui, Leading Manager for Innovation at Jeffco. Hello. And a little later we'll be joined by Nicholas Booman, Director for Development at Maersk GTD. So, what we are going to do today, we'll have several blocks, several sections to our meeting. We'll start with more general questions, then we'll discuss some specific issues. So let's start with our first block. My question is for Mr. Charkin. Mr. Charkin, late last year, the Board of Directors of RZD approved the digital strategy for RZD for the period until 2035. This strategy involves some major transformations for the company. So I want to ask you about the pandemic. Has the pandemic affected the implementation of this strategy? What kind of results have you achieved? Can you draw any conclusions based on your experiences this year? Thank you very much. Colleagues, friends, I'm really happy to see you. Unfortunately, we have to see each other online these days. I hope that we'll be able to meet face-to-face soon. Our digital transformation is based on the document you just mentioned, our strategy. And this strategy is based on 8 digital platforms that we use and operate. They cover all the business processes we have at Russian Railways, customer services, manufacturing, or you might say back office processes at our company. And these 8 platforms implement 55 projects. I would like to say that all these projects continued to work during the pandemic. You asked me if pandemic affected us, so this is my answer to your question. Of course, the situation was pretty tough because twice during this year we had to do something unprecedented. We had to take unprecedented steps allowing our employees to work from home. Twice this year we did this. We had over 110,000 employees working from home. I think this is really unprecedented. So that's on the one hand. On the other hand, we saw increased interest in digital technology. First, on the part of our customers, this is really important, of course, and the number of passengers that traveled on railways this year, of course, decreased dramatically for obvious reasons. On the other hand, we got some new customers, some new people who started using our digital services and started using railways, customers that didn't work with us before. This is a strong indication that our strategy works, and we see increased demand from our customers. For example, our digital trade platform has many more customers these days. It's a platform where you can order a specific service in a matter of minutes. Another lesson that you might say we drew this year is that the pandemic demonstrated that the things we did in the past with digitization worked. Without that, we wouldn't be able to do the things we're doing today. Customer services, infrastructure. We use corporate messaging systems at the Russian Railways a lot. We use corporate video conferencing a lot. So once the pandemic broke out, we had over 180,000 video conference meetings. So about 2,500 video conferences a day. And we have some very convenient modern tools which help us continue our operations without endangering the health of our employees, keeping our workers and our customers happy. So on the one hand, going back to the question you asked, this was a serious challenge for us. On the other hand, we were able to cope with it. We see increased demand, we see increased interest in digital technologies from our customers, from our employees, from our entire team. And then let's move on to the next part of your question. You asked about the effectiveness of digitization. It was 1.1 billion rubles last year, more than what we expected. Of course, we move on. We started with some pilot projects. Now we are rolling them out. We are scaling them out. And the advantage, the strong point about our strategy, that it's fully digital. We talk to our customers, to our shareholder, the Russian government, what we will deliver as a company, how the government will benefit, how the people of Russia will benefit. And we have specific KPIs related to the objectives which are part of our strategy. Okay, I see. So I guess the first conclusion we can draw from this situation with the pandemic and healthcare, So you might say, if you're healthy, you have strong immunity. So your company was really immune. You were well prepared for a crisis like that. Although some companies had to start from scratch, but you were well prepared. Okay, now let's talk about some specific projects. Could you give us some specific examples where digital technologies really worked, where you're no longer using our hard copies of documents, that you're using paperless technology, maybe some cross-cutting technologies, something interesting? Give us some specific examples. Well, I can give you a few. First of all, customer services. Customers are our top priority. These are the people we work for. And in terms of passenger transportation, I would like to mention how we developed our multimodal platform. This is a new system that will keep on developing. We have our Russian Railways website. We have our own app, which is extremely popular with our customers. And of course, during the pandemic, electronic sales of tickets increased dramatically. Now, as far as freight transportation is concerned, like I mentioned earlier, we have our digital platform, which we use to offer even some additional services now. And we have big plans for the future for this platform. We can work with our clients remotely, and our customers, they're happy to use this platform. And we have a very important project called Intertran. That's as far as paperless business is concerned. We started doing this in the Far East together with some other countries, the operator, the seaport, and like I said, it's fully paperless. And now there is a direct link to seaports, people working there. So this was a pilot project, and we saw that we were able to reduce shipment time period by 4 days, and so that's a major improvement. And in Q3, we had our first initial run. It was fully paperless from Ningbo, China, to Belarus, and hopefully our colleagues in Belarus will be able to add some comments later. Next, the next example, AI. And we've been developing in all the same areas that are currently being developed around the world. Speech recognition services. We have a very interesting service, assistance for train drivers. Then computer eyesight. We use technologies for assisting train drivers and tenders. Next, you may have heard about this project that we have using driverless technology on the Moscow Central Ring. Driverless trains. We are currently testing this new system. So this is our first step toward a fully driverless train system, which of course will significantly improve efficiency and productivity at railroads. Another area where we use AI at Chelyabinsk marshalling yard, we introduced new service, dispatcher assistant. So this pilot project showed that we can improve our throughput capacity by 20% at the marshalling yard. If you roll this out throughout the railroad, you can imagine what kind of effect this will have, how this will improve our efficiency. And one more example, robots. We started digitizing some routine operations at our main computer center. And I can tell you that the effect we can see today with implemented project is truly impressive. It's anything between 30 to 70% in increased productivity in our routine operations. As a next step, we will completely move on to robotization in areas like accounting, personnel matters. There's huge potential there. And finally, talking about cross-cutting technologies you mentioned, you're totally right. We see that these technologies like AI should not be used in some isolated areas. AI should have access to high-quality data. So to have quality data, we'll use the Internet of Things. And we're also doing this. We have approved a new project recently. We will start using the Internet of Things technology, and this will significantly improve the quality of our data, and we'll get this data much faster. Also, we will start working with big data, and AI will help us make decisions based on this data. So it's cross-cutting technology where we see opportunity to increase our efficiency.
Just like you said, it confirms this statement regarding maturing from experiments. We, in essence, already now switching to the real business projects that are demonstrating business results. And by the way, in order to continue, I'd like to ask Levitsky Gennady Vladimirovich a question. Just like Evgeny Igorovich said this year, at Kalyadiche of Belarus railway station, the cargo from China delivered. The transportation was provided through technology Intertran, and the question is, was it in essence first transportation without paper? And what issues had to be resolved during realization of this project? What are the advantages of this technology? And by the way, traditionally, we can help. We need to talk about the issue, how COVID, how pandemics affected this project and other projects that you do. Did it make difficult, tough, accelerate? Good afternoon, colleagues. First of all, I express my appreciation of the organizers who involved us in the interesting discussion. I'd like to note that Omsk Railway and RZD collaborate in the area of electronic dock workflow. Today, majority of the cargoes are transported with electronic transportation documents. For the transit transportation, since 2019, we realized pilot project going from Naushki to Brest, within framework of which we elaborate the interaction between Russian railways, customs organizations of the Republic of Belarus and Russia. We opened customs transit at Naushki of the Eastern Siberian Railway and completion at Brest station at the border of the customs union, using fully electronic documents and electronic customs declaration. For this reason, many issues of trans-border interaction of our countries, they were elaborated earlier. What happens now? What do we see in Intertran? First of all, this technology covers multimodal transportation from beginning till the end, accelerating processing of cargo in seaport. For Belarusian railways, more important is, for the first time, transportation became the area without paper. And electronic and legally significant things is not only transportation documents, but the freight accompanying documents. It allows us to think about future transformation of our business and technological processes. If we talk about complications at the beginning of Intertran exploitation for transit transportation. Honestly speaking, I don't want to dwell because they all overcame or will be come in the future. Briefly, I can say that the key problems were the quality of data in electronic documents. This quality, in majority of cases, depend on the human factor. These are errors, lack of precision in the documents, and this is what we have to work on now to eliminate the factor. As I said earlier, this is human routine participation in formation of electronic documents. Advantage of the project are quite obvious and quite standard. It's acceleration of initial and final operations, of clearing the cargo, and optimization of the overhead costs. Briefly about plans of development, I'd like to say that although we talk about digitalization at current stage, I'd like to say that we work on classification will include KT for transportation. Digitalization or digital transformation implies core changing within the processes, having to do with the new capacity of the digital technology, repeating electronic documents. We can get rid of the paper. Why should we run the documents along the network of the railways between interested parties? The transportation can be provided through information placed on digital transport logistical platform and always accessible to all participants of conveyance. This information will be on the portal, so this platform and trans-border interaction will be built on the blockchain technology, and I hope we'll come back to this topic. It will definitely require a number of the fundamental factors changing, and why not? This issue is to our regulators, including people present here. As for pandemic, although it's strange, it accelerated realization of the project, in particular, our joint project within Intertran, and it pushed the participants to use modern communication tools. It was mentioned today already, but the next meeting from Vladivostok to Brest we can assemble in half an hour without trip arrangement. It accelerates and optimizes the process. And finishing, allow me to quote famous statistical scientist William Edwards Daniel. So quotation, you cannot change. Survival is not necessity. I'm sure that our company understand the need to transform. That's why they will survive in this world. Hereby, I'd like to finish. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you. By the way, you touched very interesting topic, and I believe that this quintessence was voiced. We faced with this problem several years ago when there was hype of blockchain and people tried to move to blockchain current business processes. It was not very proper, and they competed with traditional processing methods, and transformation of business process has to be realized on blockchain. By the way, Evgeny Yurievich, your approach to realization, you said that you have projects with blockchain. You precisely asked the question regarding necessity of quality testing of economical efficiency of blockchain, and this is what we did, and clearly determined for ourselves the area where we can have economical benefit. We have a number of the projects underway. We started with the Oktoberskaya Railway, on the basis of which we made pilot project for 2 blockchain systems. The first is smart contract that is realized for the client operator, railway and seaport. The effect potentially is very high from the standpoint of cutting the number of the documents and efficiency and transparency of the operations. Also at Oktoberskaya Railway, we launched a platform, the net environment of rail cars, when we united blockchain of Russian railways, the owner of the rolling stock, and the companies that are in business of maintenance and repair started from the wheel set as the key element of a rail car. Very good effect. The system was able to show more than 200,000 operations in the system were carried out. Now we'll scale out. We'll scale the coverage of the platform to the other elements of freight car, and we will connect new participants. Also, on the basis of blockchain, we started and already launched part of the elements of industrial operation of the locomotive complex. The environment of locomotive complex that is applied by Russian Railways, the manufacturer of the locomotives. On the basis of this environment, all participants can build their services that will allow to increase efficiencies, predictive models, number of other services. What's important that all information is unified and it's objective. And also on the basis of locomotive complex, we realized project of interaction in implementation of smart contracts with the service companies. So blockchain technology that should be appreciated is the method of economical effect realization, and places where it is, technology can be very beneficial. Thank you. Colleagues, we switch to our next speaker, Alexei Nikolaevich Grom. Alexei, your company is Eurasian Railway Alliance. It works in the area of organization of transit conveyance of containers towards China, Europe, including territory of Republic of Kazakhstan, Republic of Belarus, Russian Federation. What is your take on multimodal, intermodal transportation? And naturally, what are the outcomes based on pandemic situation? Thank you very much. Welcome all participants. I'm glad to see all healthy. Answering your question, of course, the main thing of this vision is multimodal transportation. It will be more and more in demand for the freight owners, for the shippers. The freight owner, of course, wants better quality of service and desirably for less money. So these IT products of accompaniment products, of which Evgeny Igorevich stated, even today determined our competitiveness. And in the future, tomorrow, there'll be key factors of success of any transport company, any forwarding company. There's another demand, very important one, is presence of several variants of delivery of cargo from A to B. Every variant naturally has consumer features, it has pluses, sometimes minuses, and intermodal transportation, multimodal transportation should have very good points of growth. Even more so that the basis of such transportation is container, and container business is on the rise, at least in the countries of Eurasian Economical Union, and demonstrate very good performance by the end of the year. That will be good growth. Of course, we are interested in intermodal conveyance with participation of infrastructure of the gauge 1520, and our company is the operator of such transit services, participant of such transportation, both railway and automotive, and water transportation. On the basis of our services, we can today claim that if earlier a client that delivers cargo from China to Hamburg mostly used railway transportation, and now the line of requirements for the freight sender and freight receiver broadened in our services. The freight comes to Hamburg by railway and also by automotive vehicle, and sometimes by sea. I'm talking about transit services. Good example is the share of our transportation through Kaliningrad province ports transportation. With usage of the short sea apparatus, the services are dynamically developing, and most importantly, the service is competitive in terms of price, in terms of so important element as the time of delivery. At the same time, most of the road goes through Eurasian railways, and share of our railway participation truly is prevailing. We also, with good attention, are watching out for development of the project together between FESCO and Russian railways, such as in the Trump technology by itself is truly, with such technologies, this is the future technologies, and we need to accelerate going to digital and the letter of consignment and other documents. For us, it must be tuned. We have specifics, we have several participants, several carriers on our base routes in Kazakhstan and Belarus and in Russia. In few words, I'd like to say, and no, the results of operation this year, the results are quite good. The results are record results in our transit services. We'll have 60% more volume than last year. That's why I'd like to say thank you to many people, considering that we have digital agenda of this conference. I'd like to say, of course, thank you very much to IT managers and our shareholders and our partners for that they make our service more competitive. And as it was stated, under condition of pandemic, in very short time provided steady operation of the units with people staying at homes without failures. Thank you. Thank you very much, Alexey Nikolaevich. Next question to Tkachenko Evgeny Ivanovich. At first, we will sidetrack a little bit from the set topics such as intermodal, multimodal. Tell us, how did pandemic affect transport industry? And naturally, to a greater extent, we're interested in digitalization of the transport industry. Maybe you had cut of financing, maybe some freezing. What was the effect? Dear colleagues and Maxim, as the pandemic affecting transport complex, it made it irreversible. Till now, situation in epidemics, we survived many things. There were many atypical pneumonia. Nothing affected us as the current pandemic. Why? Obviously, because this pandemic is like a trigger in more global processes. And when we discussed the issue of strategic tendencies, we should pay attention to these processes. I'll permit myself to sidetrack. Like in ancient Rome, they said when they tried to organize supply of bread, it's necessary to sail by sea. To live is not necessary. But for us, to live is necessary. Pandemic affected connections of all types in our country. The transport connections suffered. People travel less, and every one of you experienced that. Less cargo was transported. What was suffering also? The food supply. The method of negative influence. We need to transform and transition to new packets. Digitalization by itself was discussed for a long time. So now it's time to switch. New topics arose, such as blockchain, as you said, smart contracts, and something else. But in essence, we switched to the situation that we switch our transportation activity to digital language that will be understood by new subjects of activity for new participants of the transportation process. These information systems, this is the artificial intellect, unattended and highly automated vehicles, and cargo processing, Internet of Things. And the things will pose as the customers and consumers of the transport services notice without our participation. This is a global tendency. Robotization, application of artificial intellect, and increasing efficiency of the operational mechanisms. Role of people will be less. Most of all, it will be less as distinguished Evgeny said, in routine operations. Let it be in these routine operations. More data flows, less time for processing. Artificial intellect will manage much better, and adequate instruments will be used by the pioneers, and they'll win the technology of which our president said we need in our strategic approaches take into consideration global realities.
RCD is probably the world #1 in letting its employees working from home. And we will never go back to working offline 100%. So this global transparency will result in economic clusterization. This is an objective process. For example, China has proposed regional economic partnership. The same is happening on the American continent, to a smaller degree in Europe. Our role is to connect everybody because our huge country connects all those places together. So our future is in transport corridors, seamless conditions for moving things, and not only from China to Europe, also between North and South, transporting things within the Eurasian Union. In addition to remote work modes, the pandemic also made it clear that we should use digital technology in other areas as well, because the world becomes increasingly unpredictable, and it's not just something that we see in the transport sector. This happens in all the other industries as well. There is food, the matter of food security, energy security. So our strategy should be connected to other industries related to us. Otherwise, everything we'll do will not be as effective. And of course, when we worked on our strategy, we looked at other risks, factors like the pandemic. Sooner or later, we'll cope with the pandemic, we'll have vaccines and so on. And we'll have to make a choice on our strategy, which way we want to go strategically. What are we going to do, for example, about our personnel? We worked with a company called Strategic Partners, and the study they did for us demonstrated that in many ways the transport sector is taking the lead in digital transformation. Over 50% of companies use new business models based on digital technologies. So we are faced with a dual strategic problem. Number one, we need to find new workers, new people with digital skills. And second, what do we do with all the people we'll have to lay off? People who will become redundant as a result of digital transformation. This will affect a lot of jobs. So we need a strategy, digital transformation strategy, that will take these factors into account. We need to be prepared. We need to offer retraining programs to these people, help them learn new skills, which they will use in the digital economy. When we discussed these matters, we saw that 60% of the companies in Russia today think that personnel issues are key in this matter. As we move on to the next stage of digital transformation, we should pay attention to the... we saw that there is a gap between executives and rank-and-file employees. The leaders, the executives, are much more advanced as far as digital technologies are concerned. But personally, I don't think this is that big of a problem. There's nothing wrong with a leader being more advanced than others and being a role model for all the employees. And we see new services emerging. We saw what Sberbank did recently. And this is an important matter. There are matters of information security. This should also be part of our strategy. Somebody mentioned blockchain. This involves some risks. We all understand that if there is no proper oversight in the matter of blockchain, what I mean is this tool has to be reliable. It has to be resistant to unauthorized access. It has to be 100% safe before we start using it. For example, right now, we are using a certain platform, a certain technology to talk to each other, right? And we all like this platform, we use it a lot, but you have to be aware of the risks that this involves if you depend too much on one particular tool, on one particular platform. So this is something we need to emphasize. We need to develop digital platforms. We need to use distributed ledgers, but they have to be well protected, and also they shouldn't be discriminatory. All the members should have equal access to such distributed ledgers. And recently we set up our Digital Transport Logistics Association, and the association plays an important role in these matters. This is where we all can come together and work together, building our future together, working on our future together, developing scenarios for the future, updating our transport strategy. And the transport strategy will include a special chapter on digital transformation in transport. We will continue working with RZD, with Russian Railways, because Russian Railways is the leader in our sector as far as digital transformation is concerned. We will use them for our pilot projects, to test them, because our strategy is flexible. We can change it as we go, make necessary adjustments. It's a living, flexible document. But it works. We achieve our goals. So this is our vision of the effect that the pandemic had on our work. Thank you. Thank you a lot. Thank you very much, Mr. Tkachenko. You look very confident. You said these changes are irreversible. And this is in accordance with statistics we see from the market. We saw that more than 50% of Russian companies moved on to digital technologies this year, and they say there is no going back to the former way of working. And let me give you another figure. Last year, in 2020, 31% of companies said they plan to increase their investment in digital transformation. This year, it's 70% of all companies. So like you said, the pandemic became a catalyst and demonstrated to everybody that we need to use digital technologies more and more, especially these days. Okay, now I would like to turn to the head of the Digital Transport and Logistics Association, Mr. Zamkov. So it looks like this kind of business associations and international associations, like the one you're the head of, will play an important role in the times of multimodality and intermodality. So can you tell us about what you're working on right now? Give us some examples of the projects that you're working on. Okay, yes, thank you, Maxim. Colleagues, happy to see all of you. And I think Mr. Tkachenko is perfectly right. The leading the leaders, the leading companies, they have to play the leading role. They have to anticipate things. And when the situation on the market changes, you can't ignore these changes. Otherwise, you'll become obsolete. And the market will change. And if the leader doesn't change, it will no longer be the leader. So our association is a dynamic community of experts. Mr. Tkachenko mentioned the digital transformation strategy. We worked long and hard on this document. We spent over 6 months working on it together with other government organizations. And this strategy really reflects our expectations today. And you know, in our meetings, we always discuss that business has to really change its paradigm. We should, this may sound strange, but we need to work in a predictive way. We need to anticipate coming changes, even legislative changes. We need to experiment with the sandboxes. Because if digital transformation does one thing and companies do something else, if they don't work in sync, nothing will work. Nothing will happen. There will be no digital transformation. There will be no business efficiency. So it's really good when you have certain leaders, leading companies, running some pilot projects, becoming a locomotive, something that pushes the rest of the industry forward. You know, we have this problem. I think it exists all over the world. Regulation is always lagging behind. Reality is always ahead of regulation. So let me give you an example. For example, Russian railways have this digital trade platform. They have new projects with the border crossing points. They have this project for monitoring transit consignments. It's a huge, huge project that involves a lot of IT systems. And those projects, they're pretty successful. They work pretty well. But, you know, it turns out that they're all interrelated. And what connects all those things is electronic workflow. All these processes could work much, much better. You know, like Mr. Glovitsky from Belarus said, things would work much more smoothly if we all used electronic, paperless workflow, electronic documents. Because that's where we're losing time. That's the choking point. You always have to play catch-up with the documents. It's a simple thing, electronic workflow, but it will really improve the situation and really help us along with all these things we're doing. They shouldn't be done in an isolated way. They're all interrelated, and electronic workflow will help with that. That's what we need our association for. It was created only a year ago. We saw that other sectors were doing something similar, and as a result, we decided to create this association. And I think the number one aspiration for our companies right now is not to lose this seamless operation, this connection between business and regulation, companies and the government. So very briefly, this is my answer to your question. Thank you very much. Thank you. So we see how all the key players work together quite well, the ministry, companies. So let's continue with our discussion, and we want to talk about the new business models, platforms, ecosystems. We see the overall trend is toward multimodality and intermodality. This is pretty obvious. So companies come up with new ideas, they transform their business models, they start using platforms, they start using ecosystems. I would like to turn to our international participants now. We have a couple of companies represented here. I would like now to ask Capucine Le Tregui. Capucine, could you please tell us, share some of your experiences working during the crisis this year? How did the pandemic affect your situation? And in addition to the pandemic, we saw some economic and political crises as well. So what helped you? Did you use any particular solutions that helped you continue your operations during this difficult year? And do you plan to develop those solutions further?
Yeah. So I think that at Jeffco, we were able to do, or our teams were able to do a tremendous job in, continuing the activity. So we've demonstrated a lot of resilience into adapting to these new conditions. And I think that also we'll see on the market that, players which were able to adapt to these new conditions were the most able to go through 2020. And actually, our results and the results of the best companies which were able to adapt will be the best for this year. And so what we see is that working remotely is normal. See also that adaptability and be very flexible to your customers is the new normal. We see, of course, and this talked before, that digitalization and having digital and electronic but also automated process is the new normal. And so this is why I think that it was Mr. Charkin at the beginning of the conference said that a lot of the employees were able to work remotely. At Jeffco, we had about 80%, more than 80% of our companies which were able to work remotely. So that was a tremendous job, and was enabled that the fact that we started a project 1.5 years ago, which was to implement within the whole company and within the whole subsidiaries, because we have also subsidiaries abroad, video conference call tools for everyone, and also chatting tools. And this also increased the efficiency of the teams, because they were able to have little chats in between to move along the projects. And this also created within the team to also provide a sort of belonging emotion, because the employees still felt as a team. And I think that we talked about a lot of digitalization, but there is also this sort of human factor that we have to take into account. And so into digitalization, you have to recreate the same feelings for the people to have also the momentum and the goal to move still even in working remotely. So you have to provide them with ways to recreate the sort of habits which they have when they work in office. And so we were able to provide it with these new tools. And also what has helped us a lot is that we moved a lot of our softwares from on-premise to cloud-based. And this was also a huge effect. So there was still a couple of softwares or tools that we use which were still on-premise, but we moved them to cloud-based, and this enabled us to go through the crisis. And of course, I think that it was mentioned before, but a lot of the processes that we implemented. So regarding, for example, invoices with our suppliers, but also with our customers, enabled us to, to have smooth processes, even working remotely. We talked about electronic consignment notes. So we implemented that a couple of years ago for road transportation. So all of this with these digital tools enable you to go through the crisis, to be much more adaptable, and to really stay a leader in your field, and to be able to be really resilient to this crisis. And so this is why we want to increase even more digitalization at Jeffco. So we think that it's a must-have for the future of the companies, and key players in the logistics industry will move along to be even more digital as the years come along, and we see also this as a key requirement from our customers.
I wanted to make a note, and Evgeny Ivanovich touched upon the topic, and you also gave highlight the importance of the cultural changes, change of the competences, importance of people, importance of the soft skills of these people during digital transformation. According to the analysts' reports, cultural obstacles are the key factors that prevent from the digital transformation. And further is number of the problems related to the financing, the problems related to limitations of technologies. This is very crucial. And also, by the way, we want to confirm that according to the analysts' assessments, many companies are trying to better look at the cloud scenario as the good outlook scenario and cut big area of technological costs that should be cut next year. It's internal infrastructural costs for creation of the on-premises solutions. Tell us, Cappuccini, a new problem of the new business models. Do you see system business models as the factor that also would allow the industry to withstand arrival of new players that destroying disruptive big digital companies such as Chinese big? Do you see threat from them, and how your company does in this area?
Okay, it's a very interesting question, and it's a key question, actually. So, I mean, 2 years ago, we started to analyze the market, and we saw all these new players which were coming. So some which were actually in Europe, some which were in America, in China. And we saw that digital platforms have actually surged in many different areas. So we saw digital platforms in road, we saw digital platforms for sea, and we saw it as well as there is one for air as well. And so when we looked at their figures, to be really honest and frank with you, we saw that it was quite impressive. So just to name a few, we see, for example, that Convoy, which is a road transport brokerage platform, has reached nearly $800 million annual dollars in sales. And so this is increasing year by year and is valued at nearly $3 billion. And so there is also a huge Chinese one, which is called the Fuel Truck Association Alliance, also called Bang Bang. So we saw, to be transparent, of course, it's a threat. And we see also, we have conducted interviews with customers. We saw that they want more and more these digital native tools. And this is why to be able also to provide to the customers all these reportings which are native, which have better follow-ons for the KPIs, for the budget. So we see this appetence from the customers. And so if we do not provide them with the tools needs, of course, they will turn to these digital platforms. And so what is the difference is that usually when when the sort of traditional player does digital, it does it in its sort of own thinking way. And this is where innovation and innovation teams have their quality, is that it enables the traditional teams to rethink the processes and to go digital native. And this makes a huge difference because we do approach things a complete different way. And when it's digital native and not digitally forced, you have different processes, and it's a really different value offer in the end to your customers. And so this is why when we saw the approach of these new players 2 years ago, we decided at Jeffco to buy Chronotrack, which is a road transportation digitally native platform. So what it does is that it connects directly shippers with carriers with an automated algorithm. So it searched for the good carrier at a specific moment for a specific shipment that the customer wants. And it connects them directly, so you have transparency on the price and no surprise for the shipper. So it's totally transparent. It's also all automated processes, so this makes a huge difference in the efficiency. And so all these new players have that in their sort of native environment. And so we have to be aware as more traditional players, especially for third-party logistics, so 3PLs. We have to reinforce the services that we provide to our customers, especially I think that on tracking and reporting parts, but also offering non-standard services, because all of these platforms are coming. So of course, for us, digital platforms now is a sort of must-have. And you have to provide really key differentiator services to the customers to be able to compete, because all the sort of standard work, they will be able to do that. So unless you provide new services to your customers, that you really focus on the needs, that you provide the platforms to your customers the needs, all the digital platform will come to for your business.
And next question I'd like to address to nearly joining Nicholas Buchman. Nicholas, you actively in your company develop the topic of ecosystem, eco platforms. You have a project, TradeLand. Could you, in more detail, tell us about this idea, business model, and technical foundation of this project?
Yes, thank you very much for the question, and thank you very much for the opportunity to talk here at this conference. What we are doing in TradeLens, and perhaps I should mention as an introduction that TradeLens is a joint project started by Maersk and IBM, but has over the last few years become a much larger industry-wide platform, to the extent that by now it's being used by more than 150 different ports and terminals around the world. We have connected different shipping lines like MSC, like CMA, Unifeeder, and a few others. And the purpose of this platform is really to connect global trade. I'm sure that all of you on this conference are keenly aware of the fact that global trade today is still quite inefficient, and the supply chains are fragmented. Nobody ever has the full end-to-end visibility of how a container moves across international borders. And therefore, there's a need for companies to get together closer and to exchange more data for the benefit of everyone. So what we are trying to do with TradeLens is to achieve exactly that. We're trying to move away from an ecosystem where everybody needs to have one connection with each of their business partners. And instead of everybody developing hundreds of EDI connections or whatever, we want to have one platform in the middle to which you only have to connect to once. And on this platform, you will find all of your business partners. And with those, you can then exchange data. Not only can you exchange data like milestone events, but the plan is to also digitize more and more documents, which today are in many cases still in paper. And that, by the way, is also something we have noticed is extremely important in times of the current pandemic. And as some of my previous speakers have said, many companies and also public institutions have had to change their processes overnight to adapt to a scenario where a global pandemic is forcing many countries to go into lockdown. And all of a sudden, your current previous manual paper-based flows were not possible to be continued. So in the past, it was perhaps easy to have someone on a motorbike to run around town to deliver bills of ladings from one office to the other office to the other office. But when there's a lockdown, nobody can transport bill of ladings around town anymore. So you are forced to bring these documents into a digital format. And we have seen in many places that this digitization happened basically overnight. And we believe that it's a step in the right direction. And we also see that in many countries, the bureaucratic burdens for bringing goods into the country have been lifted. It has become easier to trade. And we do hope that some of these improvements in trade will actually also continue once everything has normalized again. So some of the bureaucracy that we now got rid of because of COVID, it's not needed, this bureaucracy, and we hope that it's not going to come back when we turn back into normal. So as TradeLens, what we are really trying to achieve here is we're trying to connect the different entities, and we're using a wide range of technologies for that. One of the technologies that we're using for this is indeed the blockchain technology, as it was also mentioned by one of the previous speakers. We do believe that blockchain is a technology with great potential, but we also, of course, understand that it's still a very new technology. And that's why we're using blockchain as a technology only in a part of TradeLens where we believe it makes most sense and where we can ensure that it is indeed 100% secure, and where we can ensure that all the permissions are in place for only authorized organizations or users to access the data. Particularly in Russia, we have also started a very fruitful collaboration a while ago. We have, in the meantime, connected already companies like Global Ports, both in the Baltic Sea, but also in the far eastern part of Russia, where they have connected the terminals and are exchanging data in real time with TradeLens and the ecosystem. Similarly, we have connected a company called Module, which is a provider of rail services, also including the intercontinental rail, meaning bringing containers from the east of Russia also to the Baltic Sea. And Module as a company is providing data to TradeLens waypoint events a couple of times per day, informing the other participants in the supply chain about the current location of the container. And we find that this added data is incredibly valuable for the other participants in the supply chain to have the transparency they need to understand when there are any disruptions in the transport of their containers, but also to better predict when subsequent modes of transport need to be arranged. So they want to know, when is the container going to arrive at the terminal? When can it be picked up by my trucker for onward transport? So overall, this has been an incredibly productive collaboration where everybody in this collaboration has benefited. We are also doing some pilot work with the Ministry of Transport and also the Federal Customs Services, where data is being exchanged beyond the data that Customs already has today. And likewise, this is also a project that we have high hopes for. We also hope that in the near future, we can expand our collaboration to also work together more closely with Russian railways and also with UTLC and some of the other companies that are involved in global transport, because we believe that the more people actually join the network, the more valuable it becomes for everyone involved. And that's, of course, what is called the network effect. And that's the whole purpose of digitization, of coming together, of exchanging more data with each other. Thank you.
Другие коллеги меня слышат?
Do other colleagues hear me?
Да, теперь слышу.
Yes, now we can hear you.
Слышно?
Прекрасно.
Yes,
Ну,
wonderful.
тогда я постараюсь
Then I'll
ответить на
try to
вопрос.
answer questions because I didn't quite hear what Maxim asked. The port of Hamburg continued to operate 24 hours, 7 days a week, despite of tough situation related to pandemic. If we talk about digital processes, then digitalization in seaport, or rather transmission of data, started much before pandemic in 1985. In the port was need to transfer data in electronic form, and it was created by 3 associations, business associations, a company, private company, IT company that offered new solution to transfer data in electronic form. Company Dacosi suggests solution to exchange data not only between the participants of the market in the territory of Hamburg port and without Hamburg port and European Union territory and without regulating bodies of the state. The process is very cumbersome and difficult. The most important complexity is the reconciliation of the terms and the standards of data transfer, how this data looks, what this data is. At present moment, solutions that are offered by Dacosi is used by more than 2,500 companies only in territory of port, beside communication system that provides practically paperless process of port. Of course, there is a number of other projects that the company is working in the port on the regular basis, test and apply it for daily work. For instance, I can say that administration of Hamburg port tests water unattended vehicles, the technology related to digitalization. The drones send information online, for instance, about the state of sea channels and waterways in the port. At the terminals, they use flying drones in order to watch out for the state of machinery, in order to carry out photographing of the objects at the terminal. Of course, in the port, there's testing of the 5G equipment that also accelerates data transmission. It is receiving financing from the German government because the government realizes necessity to have this technology in place. Added reality or virtual reality technology is used for designing, for forecasting situation in the territory of port and in the companies. Railway of the port uses so-called rail data gate. These are sensors that allow to receive real-time data on the territory of the port. They receive data according to the declared data. We see online the number of the flat cars, number of the wagons, number of the containers, all of this we can have online. The key objective is, of course, to improve the quality and accelerate the service of the customers, because we understand that as soon as ships become bigger, the more cargo in question, the processed transport vehicles are more. We need to help companies to work faster. That's why we study all possible technologies to apply them for improvement of operation of the port. Maxim, I hope I answered your question. Oh yes, of course. Thank you much indeed. Natalia, by the way, maybe we can touch upon another topic briefly. Do you feel a need in infrastructural services, and maybe even more interestingly, to hear your opinion regarding necessity in standards, the cross-industrial standards, supranational standards, that would allow to increase efficiency of this interaction, including multimodal?
Well, of course, but if we take a closer look, there are over 20 organizations around the world that work on new standards, and those standards apply to all the countries. There is the World Sea organizations. They also develop standards that all freight companies use. All maritime companies use the same standards. And there are other organizations in addition to that with their own standards. Let's take seaports. With multimodality, we use many different kinds of transport at seaports. It's about one-third of cargo is reloaded into smaller ships. Then one-third is transferred to trucks, and then there are trains going from China to Europe, over 20 trains every week. That's what we process at our port. And Hamburg is the biggest multimodal port in Germany. And of course, when you have so many different types of transport working together, you do need certain standards. And it's not easy to coordinate standards between different market players, different kinds of transport. Actually, coordinating standards takes a lot of time. Right, thank you. Let's stay on this subject for a while. I wanted to mention you know that a certain sector is mature enough when they come up with their own standards. And we mentioned some very popular projects that attracted a lot of hype. And now we're talking about more substantial things, infrastructure, standards. For example, with blockchain, that's exactly what happened there. It started with a lot of hype. Now we're moving on to the stage where we have a lot of players working together, establishing standards. Let me move on to Mr. Nozdrin now. Mr. Nozdrin, your company, Trans Telecom, is one of the IT and telecom giants in Russia. So, could you please tell us about your company, what it does for digital transformation, your work with the Russian railways, etc. Maxim, ladies and gentlemen, hello, thank you for the question. Yes, we are involved in digital transformation at Russian railways and in this entire sector. And we are asking the same question ourselves all the time. We need to understand our role clearly. And we realize that the new generation of networks is a strong foundation of everything that's happening in the economy. So our company and other telecom companies will play a major role in the future. We need to build a strong foundation. It has to be friendly. It has to be indiscriminatory, neutral, so that all market players can equally use it. And we are looking for a proper approach how to handle this matter. And we even came up with a hierarchy of sorts of network solutions. So let me present this hierarchy to you now. At the basic level, you have these networks, different networks working together, creating seamless environment where data can flow freely and where all solutions can work together. And it can include all sorts of technologies, basic technologies like DWDM, and more sophisticated networks that are currently being developed, like Radio Ethernet, Wi-Fi, Internet of Things, RFID networks, quantum communications, 5G networks, as they become more and more popular in Russia, will also be part of this infrastructure. But networks in themselves are not enough. They need devices connected to these networks, and the number of devices is growing. devices that can perform measurement, sensors, cameras, etc. And also devices that operate like actuators and some other devices. And of course, network infrastructure absolutely has to include some computing capacities where data is stored or processed, because we are talking about a huge amount of data. And this includes billing, customer support, monitoring systems, etc., etc. So you have these networks, and all platform owners have high expectations, high requirements. This has to be a homogeneous network, homogeneous environment, and it has to be fully licensed, and there should be a standard interface for connecting to this network, and it has to be reliable. But even if we create such a network, once we have all these elements in place, this will still not be enough for full and complete digitization. Because currently market players are thinking about the next step. They're thinking about a smart system that would protect infrastructure, would not just provide access to communications. It will also perform analysis functions, use geolocation data, etc., etc. So let me give you an example, something that we worked on in 2020, and this is a project we did for Russian Railways and some other partners. We created a security monitoring system. This was a huge project we did this year, one of our largest projects this year. It was a very sophisticated platform because it includes a large number of modules. The main purpose of this center is to create a unique platform that will help make sure that all information resources, all information assets of Russian Railways and all of its subsidiaries are well protected. It's an information security center. And the center has to be able to respond to any breaches, any violations of the security regime within the company. And we understand today that all the parties involved in shipping feel comfortable working with us, outsourcing some information projects, information security projects to companies like ours. So once we address these fundamental issues, we built the ground level. We created a network and some additional elements that protect this system, make it reliable. Once we have this basic level well established, we can move on to the next stage and do something on top of that. And we did a project in 2010 together with the Russian Railways and a few other partners. We created a network of locomotive diagnostic stations. And this was a pilot project, and we are going to continue with that. We've built this diagnostic stations at several depots, several platforms. This system can now diagnose about 50 types of malfunctions on locomotives. And we saw clearly that this project has to be continued. There are a few issues at this point, because Russian Railways uses a lot of diagnostic systems, all kinds of. There are a large number of different monitoring systems they use. They use a large number of applications. On the one hand, they are all effective, they work quite well. On the other hand, some of these solutions are used in a fragmented and isolated way. That's why we decided to create a testing ground where we can bring all these tools together and create a seamless environment where they can all be used effectively as parts of one big system. So we rolled out our pilot project at Kursk Railway. We set up a automated center for locomotive diagnostics, and this project, we presented a report on this project in October earlier this year. The ultimate goal is to use marshalling yards throughout the country as stations for such diagnostic centers. We will create a digital twin based on the data we collect from sensors, and we'll use this digital twin to improve certain processes like scheduling, increasing security and safety of our railways, reducing the number of malfunctions, etc., etc. So this was just one example of what we do. I told you about what we did with the Russian railways this year, and I explained how we work on different levels, starting with the very basic, the fundamental level of networks, and going all the way to the top, all the way to platforms that help us achieve the ultimate goal of digitization. So going back to your initial question, in conclusion, I would like to say once again, yes, we do play an important role in creating this fundamental level, basic level of networks. And this role will become more and more important over time. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Nazrin. By the way, I would like to mention we had a few slides initially, but then we all agreed that we will not use any slides for our discussion today. Slides will be available later. There are a few specific examples that might be interesting for you to take a look at. Mr. Nazrin, you touched on a large number of important subjects. Unfortunately, we didn't have enough time today to get into the specifics, and we didn't have time to talk about cybersecurity, for example, information security, although these are important aspects of digitization. We all know that this is absolutely necessary. This is a prerequisite because we are facing new kinds of threats, new kinds of challenges. So we definitely need tools to counter those threats. Now that we are moving into this hybrid world of digital and physical things, well, I think we are getting closer and closer to the conclusion of our discussion today. We are running out of time, and we have a large number of issues that we need to discuss. We received a large number of questions from our viewers, but most of those questions were addressed to Russian railways. So I guess what we'll do is we'll ask our colleagues from Russian railways to take those questions, and we'll get back to you. Because when registering, you entered your email addresses, and we'll get back to you. There is one question for Mr. Grom, though. So, Mr. Grom, the question goes like this. By the way, is Mr. Grom still with us? If he's not, oh, okay, he's left. Okay, so he'll get back online a little later. And I have another question. It was initially for Nicholas, but maybe others could help. The government authorities refuse to accept trade lens documents, and this is a huge disadvantage. Is there a way to fix this situation, and when do you think it can be fixed?
Yeah, I think the way that you have to think about the data coming from TradeLens is that it's being additional data provided voluntarily by the private companies in order to enable customs and other authorities to do their job better and faster. I know that there are, of course, a lot of regulations in place today which require documents to be submitted in a specific format. And at least in the beginning, we see that TradeLens can provide data in addition to the existing flow of information, which means that authorities could, with TradeLens, start to process containers before they even arrive. Then once the containers arrive, then they have already had a few days, a few weeks to formulate their decision about whether a container has to be inspected or not. And then it can still go through the existing flow of getting the existing customs declaration and so on. But the point is, you just put a lot of the work and decision early on in the process. It's not initially necessarily going to replace the existing reporting formalities, but it's going to enhance them. And over time, when confidence grows in the reliability of the data, and when people get used to the new digital way of working, then we can think about also changing regulation, and we can think about a full transition into the new way of working. So it's really an evolution, I would say.
Nicholas, thank you very much. Anybody else, would you like to add something on this matter? So feel free to jump in.
Я могу
I
только...
mean, on my side, I don't know if you have a translation. Can you? Okay, sorry. Yeah, so I think that actually one of the things which is really necessary is, and this is also what Nicolas said, is to have common standards. So really working together, all the players of logistics, all the players of rails together, or all the players of sea, we will be able to have common standards of data. And with common standards of data, then you can exchange much more faster, and you get much more efficiency in the processes. And so this is really important to have these sort of associations to put these common standards in place, because the whole industry will benefit from that. And I think that especially in the sea industry, you see that they are much more advanced on this sort of association topic than other area of logistics. And so I know, and I think that Nicolas knows that a lot. So you have a Digital Container Shipping Association, so DCSA, which has released its first standards for exchange of data, so also for exchange of electronic bills of lading that will help get faster customs between the different logistic companies that operate in the sea segment. So from the companies which are moving the containers to the shipping companies, to the companies which are after that taking the containers. So I think that this is a sort of first initiative that we're seeing. But we need to see much more to gain this efficiency in customs, and also I think especially with the UK leaving Europe now, this is one of the things that we need, but also in the exchanges that we have in the pan-European zone.
Thank you, Natalia. You wanted to say something. Am I wrong? From my side, I'd like to say, if you look at example of the COSI company, how it works with the customs, then the company is certified for data exchange with the customs in Germany. The platform that uses Federal Customs Service of Germany is called Atlas. And the data exchange that is being offered by the platforms and offered by the COSI allow to exchange data with the customs service with German-speaking countries of European Union. Unfortunately, for instance, we cannot use the solutions of the COSI here. But I think that this process is underway, and we need to simply come to agreement what data concretely we should exchange with the Federal Customs Service of Russia. It's not fast. Usually it takes a long time to come to agreement. Yes. By the way, I recall conference of last year, if I'm correct, Alexei Nikolaevich, it was quotation that you used in your speech. Satisfaction of needs of the law enforcement bodies is one of the key objectives of the transportation process. Probably the platform should take into consideration and make it a priority for services that we perform. All right now, and Alexei Nikolaevich, you came back. Question to you. Under pandemic, OTLK businesses on the rise. I quote the question practically word for word. I'm sure that your company has favorable conditions of implementation of full-scale digitalization between all participants of the railway delivery process. Do you have plans or current issues interacting with foreign partners outside of Belarus and Kazakhstan? All right, friends. Then allow me to express my thanks to all participants of our discussion. I, for myself, made some notes, in essence, 5 bullet points, resumes. I'll allow to voice out. First, we started to receive and really can see business projects that provide business value, that in essence provide business case, create business cases. The second, necessity to transform operational models, business models, making up in essence new business models that in turn don't contain restrictions that we had in the past. The digital technologies allow us to lift those restrictions. The third, necessity to pay attention not only to technical issues, but also to the issues of cultural transformation, issue of transformation of the competences, issues of formation of new types of competences, business competences, of the technical subdivisions and technological competences within business subdivisions. Fourth, importance of the aspect of formation of infrastructure of new type, digital infrastructure of new type, of new kind. Again, like for decades or hundreds of years ago, we, in the periods of previous revolutions, industrial revolutions, formed infrastructure of railways, then electrical railways. Now we need digital infrastructure of new type, both national and supranational infrastructure. At the same time, the role of standards, the role of the protocols is on the rise. And the fifth bullet point, irreversibility of the processes. Irreversibility of the processes of digitalization are dependence on the digital technologies. Colleagues, the record of this event will be on the website of the conference. It will be in both Russian and English. Besides, on the site you can download materials and become familiar with the news and the outcomes of the conference. On behalf, at the request of the organizers, I'd like to invite you to participate in events under promotion in 2021. Information about upcoming events will be available on the website. There'll be also a calendar of events. Despite of everything, no matter how tough was 2020. I'd like to wish you success in coming year. Let all the bad stays in the past. Happy New Year, dear colleagues. Thank you very much for interesting discussion.